The divine. You've forgotten you were not born to obey. Long before anyone taught you what to believe, how to behave, or who to become, there was a spark, a silent flame, a current of ancient knowing pulsing in the marrow of your bones. You didn't
learn it. You didn't earn it. It was always there, buried beneath language, beneath memory, beneath time.
And though they tried to silence it, to shape you into something acceptable, something small, that flame never went out. It dimmed, but it never died. From the moment your eyes opened, the world moved quickly. Not to imprison you with chains, but with forgetting. The system didn't need bars, it only needed stories. Stories whispered by tired parents, by well-meaning teachers, by screens and books and voices that wore masks of authority. They told you what was real and what was not, what was possible and what was laughable, and they wrapped those stories around your soul until you forgot it was there, until you confused obedience with goodness, silence with peace, and repetition with truth. But still, something stirred. A tension behind your thoughts, a hum beneath your emotions, a question you couldn't silence. Is this all there is? That question wasn't rebellion. It was memory. It was the voice of what you truly are, aching to be heard. The ache you've carried, that quiet dissonance, that sense that you are more than your job, your roles, your routines. That is not your weakness. It is your wake-up call. You were not made to fit in. You were made to remember. The infinite wasn't meant to bow to systems. It was meant to break them with its presence. You were not created to perform, to please, to conform. You were created to radiate, to expand, to awaken, and you don't need to learn how. You need to remember how. Because the truth has never left you. It's only been buried beneath layers of noise. You didn't lose your divinity. You were trained to forget it. The war was never loud. It was quiet. Waged in textbooks, in commercials, in social media scrolls, and polite conversations. But now the veil is thinning. The whisper is getting louder. The light behind your eyes is growing stronger. You're not here to become anything. You're here to undo what was never real. This isn't a new philosophy. This is a return, not to dogma, not to doctrine, but to the deep pulse of knowing that has always lived in you. This video isn't here to teach you something new. It's here to remind you of what you've always known, what was never lost, only forgotten. The divine within you is not a theory, it's a presence. And it's time to wake it up. Because the world doesn't need another person playing the script. It needs someone who remembers they wrote it. The lie you were trained to live. From the moment you could walk, the world began handing you scripts. Not stories you chose, but roles you were expected to perform. The system moved quietly, like a magician's hand, not with violence, but with distraction. It dressed control in costumes of love, structure, and education. You were told it was for your safety, for your growth. But what it really taught you was how to forget yourself. Because it never feared your failure. It feared your freedom. You were given a name and told it was your identity. A flag and told it was your belonging. A set of grades and told they defined your worth. The classroom wasn't just a place of learning, it was a temple of quiet conditioning. Sit still, raise your hand, wait your turn, ask for permission to speak. And so you did, because that's what children do. You trusted, you absorbed, you adapted. Not because you were weak, but because you were wide open. They called it education. But it was programming. You were not being taught what to think, you were being taught what not to question. History was rewritten by conquerors, science was sterilized of spirit, literature taught obedience, and somewhere along the way you began to shrink, to suppress, to edit yourself for survival. And every time you hid a part of yourself to be accepted, a piece of your divinity dimmed just a little more. The lie wasn't loud, it was soft, gentle. It sounded like, be realistic, don't dream too big. This is just the way the world works. And you believed it, because everyone around you believed it too.
Even those who loved you the most passed it down because it was all they knew. They were not your jailers, they were your fellow prisoners. No one told you this cage existed. That's what made it so powerful. It was invisible. The truth? You
were born infinite. But you were trained to fit into something finite. You were told to chase approval, not purpose, to follow rules, not intuition, to strive for success, not sovereignty. And the roles they gave you, student, employee, citizen, became your armor. But over time, that armor turned into a shell. It protected you from rejection, yes, but it also blocked your light. They don't need to control you with force when they've convinced you to police yourself. When you measure your value through productivity, when you silence your voice to avoid discomfort, when you pursue goals that were never yours, you become your own warden. That's the genius of the lie. You carry the key, but forget there's even a door. This isn't a conspiracy of men in suits. It's older than that. It's woven into culture, passed through language, embedded in traditions.
And the most dangerous part, you think it's normal, you think it's yours. That's how deep the training runs. You internalize the script. You didn't just memorize it, you became it. But beneath all that, beneath the roles, the masks, the
noise, there's still a hum, a tremble of truth. You feel it when the room goes quiet, when you look at the stars, when something inside you whispers, "This isn't who I am." That whisper isn't fantasy. It's a memory. The memory of what you were before the world told you what to be. And now here you are, older, wiser, a little weary perhaps, but still haunted by that hum, still seeking something real in a world full of shadows. You may not have language for it, but you feel it, that inner pull towards something bigger, something more true. That's not an illusion, it's the original signal trying to break through the static. You were trained to forget that your soul is sovereign,
that your body is sacred, that your mind is not a prison, it's a portal. You were trained to live from the outside in, to respond to expectations rather than intuition. But your awakening begins the moment you ask, what if none of this is mine? What if the dreams you chase were installed, not inspired? What if your anxiety isn't a dysfunction, but a signal that your soul is suffocating? What if the life you're living is just a reflection of a belief you never chose?
The system didn't want you to ask these questions. It wanted you to keep scrolling, keep consuming, keep performing, but you paused, you noticed, you remembered. That's where the spell starts to break. You don't need to burn your life down to wake up. You only need to see it clearly. Awareness
is the first rebellion. The moment you observe the script is the moment you stop being ruled by it. And from there, something radical begins. You stop reacting. You start remembering. You stop performing. You start being.
You return not to who you were taught to be, but to who you've always been. And who you've always been is not someone who follows. You are someone who listens inward. You are someone who questions. You are someone who feels the falsehood of this normal life and refuses to betray their soul for safety. You are not here to win their game. You are here to remember you were never meant to play it. You are not a broken machine in need of fixing. You are a sacred intelligence in need of remembering. The lie you were trained to live has run its course, and now it is your turn to write something truer, because you've seen through the illusion. You've touched the veil, and nothing can take that from you, not now, not ever. Practical exercise. The script audit, 5-10 minutes. Find a quiet space. Sit with a journal and write the following question at the top of the page. What parts of me were trained, not chosen? Breathe deeply. As thoughts rise, roles, behaviors, beliefs, don't judge them. Just observe. Begin listing the stories you've carried that never felt truly yours. Ask yourself, whose voice is this? Where did I learn this rule? Who benefits from me believing this? When you're done, circle one belief that feels most false and write in bold beneath it, I return this script, I choose my own. The fracturing of the infinite self. There was a time when you were whole. Before language carved borders around your essence. Before expectations split your desires into categories of acceptable and dangerous. Before you were taught to choose between truth and belonging. You didn't arrive fragmented, you were not born in pieces. You came into this world intact, radiant, undefended, untouched by the shame of being too much or not enough. But the world, in its fear of your wholeness, began to cut. Not with knives, but with praise and punishment. With silence when you cried too loudly. With applause when you performed the acceptable version of yourself. You learned quickly that certain parts of you made others uncomfortable. Your wildness, your intuition, your softness, your certainty. And so, like a child hiding treasures in the dirt, you buried those parts. You didn't discard them. You stored them in the shadows, somewhere safe, somewhere unseen. This is how the fracturing began. Not all at once, but gradually with every moment you were rewarded for shrinking. You dimmed your laughter to be polite. You silenced your anger to be liked. You doubted your knowing to be accepted. You became fluent in betrayal, not of others, but of yourself. And over time, the infinite self that once danced unbroken became divided into compartments. The version you showed, the version you feared, the version you forgot. Wholeness was traded for survival, sovereignty for safety. And the fracture became so familiar, you mistook it for identity. But the soul never forgets, it aches. It aches in moments you can't explain. When your throat tightens in conversations that ask you to lie. When your chest burns as you pretend to care about things that don't matter. When you smile and feel a flicker of grief because the person they're seeing isn't quite you. That ache is not dysfunction. It is the voice of the whole self, still alive. Beneath the edits, your fragmentation didn't start with failure. It started with love, a love that was conditional, a love that said, be this and you'll be safe. And so you split yourself to survive, and that was sacred. That was intelligent. But now, survival is no longer enough. Your soul is not here to manage pain. It is here to transmute it. And wholeness is not about healing what's broken. It's about retrieving what was hidden. Every version of you that was exiled, your rage, your playfulness, your sorrow, your sensuality, they are not mistakes. They are fragments of God disguised as emotions. And they are waiting, not to be judged, not to be explained, but to be felt, fully, without condition, without apology. The world taught you that being whole meant being consistent. But consistency is a cage when it comes at the cost of truth. You were not designed to be one note. You are a symphony. You are the priest and the sinner, the child, and the sage, the fire and the stillness. And when you fracture yourself to fit, you don't just lose complexity, you lose power. Wholeness is power, not power over others, but the raw, rooted presence that arises when nothing within you is banished. Imagine what it would feel like to walk into a room and not wonder which version of you needs to show up. Imagine saying what you mean, crying when you need to, laughing when it's not appropriate, and knowing you are still worthy, still holy, still home. But the journey back isn't a performance, it's a descent into the body, into the breath, into the places where the fractures were first made. You will find old stories there, old voices, old agreements you never consciously signed. They may whisper, "It's too much, you'll be alone, you'll be punished." And that's okay. Let them speak. Then remember, you are not the child who needed to split anymore. You can hold your own fire now. Your mind was taught to manage you, to keep you in line. It was trained by systems that see feeling as weakness, vulnerability as danger, contradiction as threat. But your soul is not linear. It is wild, and wildness is not chaos. It is truth in motion. To be whole is to be wide, enough to contain it all, i.e. the clarity and the confusion, the joy and the despair, the divine and the broken. The mystics understood this. They did not bypass emotion. They did not suppress their grief in the name of enlightenment. They walked
into it, they drank it, they burned in it.
Because they knew that wholeness is not light without darkness. It is light that has made peace with its shadows. In ancient alchemical traditions, the prima materia, the raw substance from which gold is born, was not something
pure and pristine. It was dark, chaotic, full of contradictions. And that is you, not the curated version, but the messy, holy, tangled you. The sacred matter of awakening is not what's perfect, it's what's real. You were never too much.
You were never broken. You were never meant to be easy to understand. You were meant to be felt, to be known by the resonance of your presence, not the approval of your packaging. And every part of you that was cast out is still here, waiting at the edges, asking not for justification, but for integration. This is not about balance. This is not about becoming some idealized version of enlightenment. This is about truth, your truth. The kind that doesn't fit into spiritual memes or self-help slogans. The kind that shakes the room when spoken aloud. The kind that makes you weep, not because it hurts, but because it frees. And yes, this will cost you. It will cost you your performance. It will cost you the approval of those who only loved the edited you. It will cost you comfort, but what you gain in return is nothing short of yourself, because you cannot live half dead. You cannot heal what you're unwilling to feel, and you cannot embody the divine while exiling its voices. All of you is sacred, even the parts they told you to hide, especially those parts, because they are the bridge, not the barrier, to your return. Practical exercise. The Council of Exiled Selves. 10 minutes. Find a quiet place. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Visualize a round table in the center of a quiet room. One by one, allow different aspects of yourself to enter the room. The angry one, the wild one, the ashamed one, the joyful one, the lost one. Don't control them. Don't fix them. Just watch. Let them take a seat at your sacred council. When they are all seated, ask them gently, "What do you want me to know?" Listen. Write down what you hear. Then speak this aloud, to the room, to yourself, to the soul. You are welcome here. All of you, I remember. The code in your DNA, your blood remembers. Even when your mind forgets, your bones do not. Inside your cells is a living scripture, a sacred manuscript written not with ink, but with vibration. This is not poetry, it is biology, woven with divine intelligence. You were not born as blank clay. You were born encoded with memory, with meaning, with the infinite language of light shaped into the spiral of your DNA. They call it genetics, but ancient cultures knew it as something else. The divine inheritance, the breath of the gods preserved across generations. The Egyptians called it Sa, the energy blueprint passed from the netters to humanity. In the Vedic scriptures, it was karma stored in the seed. The Gnostics called it the Christos code, and mystics across time have whispered of its presence, a living library hidden within the body, waiting for the right vibration to unlock it. You are not a random configuration of chemicals. You are a transmission tower for something ancient and alive. Your DNA is not just a map of your form, it is a mirror of your origin. And though science may reduce it to molecules and markers, what flows through those spirals is far more than code. It is consciousness condensed. But here is what they never told you. This divine coding has been interfered with, muted, not by accident, but by design. Systems of control do not thrive in the presence of awakened beings. So they distract you. They numb you. They flood your life with noise, with toxins in your food, with stress in your schedule, with doubt in your thoughts. And the more you live in survival, the quieter the code becomes, not gone. Just dormant. Because your DNA responds to your state of being. It does not wait for permission. It waits for resonance. When you think, feel, speak, and act in alignment with your essence, it lights up. It sings, it remembers. And in that remembering, it rewrites the script. Not just the one you were taught, but the one written deep in the marrow of your existence. This is why awakening is not just spiritual, it is physical. Mystics didn't meditate just to escape the world. They meditated to activate the world within. Their breath, their mantras, their rituals, all were tools to stimulate the dormant frequencies locked in their cells. Every chant, every posture, every sacred movement was a tuning fork designed to shake loose the static that buried their light. Your DNA is not fixed, it is fluid, it responds to frequency. And the most powerful frequency you possess is intention. A clear, coherent intention held in the heart and spoken through the breath sends a vibrational command through your biology. And when that command harmonizes with your original divine design, the dormant codes begin to awaken. Think of it like this. Each strand of your DNA is a string on a sacred instrument. Most people live their entire lives strumming only one or two. But you are remembering how to play the whole symphony. And the sound you create when you do, it bends reality. Because your DNA is not just receiving this world. It is shaping it. This is the secret the ancients protected. This is why temples were built with resonance in mind, why certain chants were reserved only for initiates, why names were considered sacred because sound alters structure, and you are not separate from that structure. You are the temple. You are the chant. You are the name that was forgotten, but now begins to rise again. Modern science is just beginning to catch up. Epigenetics now confirms what sages have always known. your environment, your thoughts, your emotions, they don't just affect your mood. They affect your biology. The script of your genes is not final. It is responsive. And more than that, it is intelligent. But you must meet it. You must speak to it with intention, with breath, with presence, because the code cannot be unlocked through force. It responds to coherence, to alignment, to truth. When you live out of sync with your essence, chasing goals that were never yours, swallowing stories that silence your soul, your DNA withdraws, it closes, not to punish you, but to protect its sacred frequency. But when you begin to live your truth, yet even quietly, even trembling, the strands begin to hum. The light begins to stir. This is why moments of clarity feel electric. Why truth spoken aloud sends shivers through your spine. Why the right word at the right time, spoken from the right voice, can awaken something you thought was lost forever. That's not sentiment, that's cellular. Your DNA is listening, not to your surface, but to your signal. And when that signal returns to its divine pitch, you change. Not through effort, but through coherence. You speak differently. You walk differently. You remember who you are, not as an idea, but as a frequency, a living vibration that alters everything it touches. This is why the system fights so hard to keep you distracted, because a coherent human being, one who breathes with intention, who speaks with clarity, who lives from alignment, cannot be controlled. Their very presence becomes a tuning fork. It begins to recalibrate others. Without preaching, without effort, just by existing in integrity. This is not fantasy. It is not wishful thinking. It is physics wearing the robe of mysticism. You are a resonant being. Your DNA is the instrument. Your consciousness is the conductor. And your intention is the hand that lifts the baton. So the question is not whether your divinity is real. The question is, are you ready to remember it? Are you willing to feel what has been buried? To sing what has been silenced? To walk not
as a persona, but as a presence. You do not need a guru. You need alignment. You do not need to chase ascension.
You need to return to the breath, to the body, to the code that's been humming beneath your skin since the beginning. You are not becoming divine. You are remembering that you always were. Practical activation. The DNA resonance breath, 7-10 minutes. Sit in stillness. Place your right hand on your chest, your left on your abdomen. Breathe deeply, and for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. With every inhale, visualize golden strands of light spiraling up your spine. As you exhale, whisper the sound "Ah," a primal frequency used in many sacred languages. Imagine this sound vibrating through your cells, unlocking dormant strands of your DNA. Now softly speak aloud. I awaken the code within me. I speak the name I have forgotten. I breathe life into my remembering. Repeat for 3-5 cycles. Journal any sensations or insights that arise. This is not just breath work. It is resonance, a direct communion with the godlight in your blood. The war on the third eye. There is a reason they fear your silence. Not the kind that avoids conflict, but the kind that listens beyond language. There is a reason they fill your ears with noise, your screens with chaos, your life with distractions. Because the moment you become still, you begin to see. And not with your physical eyes, but with the eye they never wanted you to use. You were born with a gate in the center of your brain, a lens not of flesh, but of light. In every sacred tradition it was revered, in every empire built on control it was suppressed. The Egyptians carved it into their temple walls as the Eye of Horus. The Hindus crowned their gods with it, calling it the Ajna chakra. The mystics called it the seat of the soul, the pineal gland, the third eye. This was not symbolic, it was
anatomical. Buried between the hemispheres of your brain, shaped like a pine cone, it was known by the ancients as the antenna of divine perception. The bridge between matter and meaning, between thought and knowing, between you and the you beyond form. But in the modern world, they laugh at this idea. They tell you it's superstition, metaphor, a relic of myth. And yet, why is it carved in stone across cultures that never spoke the same language? Why did Plato, Descartes, and Da Vinci all reference it with awe?
Why did ancient rituals revolve around activating it, while modern systems do everything in their power to dull it? Because the war isn't on your beliefs, it's on your perception. The third eye doesn't just help you see vision, it helps you see through lies, through illusions, through the programmed dream they call reality. And a population that sees clearly cannot be governed in the same way. They begin to question, they begin to disobey, not with rebellion, but with clarity. And so the war became quiet, chemical, cultural, strategic, fluoride in your water, not to protect your teeth, but to calcify the gland, glyphosate in your food, not to grow crops, but to erode the gut-brain connection. Blue light in your screens, not for convenience, but to scramble your circadian rhythm, hijack your melatonin, and suffocate your spiritual sensitivity. They called it science, they called it progress, but underneath it, all was a precise campaign to sedate the seer within you. Because when the third eye opens, your priorities shift. You stop obeying out of fear. You stop chasing what doesn't nourish you. You stop believing what everyone else accepts without question. You begin to perceive truth, not as information, but as vibration. You feel when something is real, even if no one around you sees it. That is power. Not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable. The pineal is more than a gland. It is a portal. It produces DMT, the molecule released in moments of birth, death, and deep meditation. The chemical of transition. The key that unlocks access to dimensions outside of linear time. And yet in modern medicine it's considered irrelevant. Coincidence? No, it is the most sacred structure in your body. And they covered it with fog. You wonder why life feels dull, why your dreams fade, why your sense of wonder erodes. It's not because you've aged. It's because you've been sedated. Gradually, precisely, spiritually, but here's the truth. The war may be real, but so is your ability to reclaim what was stolen. The pineal can be reawakened. The third eye can be reopened, not through fantasy, but through discipline, through detox, through devotion to presence. Because perception is not a trick, it's a muscle. And you, child of light, were born to see. Do you remember the moments, brief but unmistakable, when you felt reality bend? When a stranger said something that pierced you without explanation? When time slowed in the woods, or during a song, or in the silence before sleep? That was not coincidence. That was your third eye whispering, I'm still here, even under layers of calcification, even after years of distraction, even after lifetimes of forgetting. It waits, because that's what it was designed to do, to guide you home, through illusion, through chaos, through the fog of this world, and when it reawakens, everything shifts. Dreams become messages, symbols come alive. You begin to feel the meaning behind events, not just the surface. Synchronicities.
Multiply, your intuition sharpens.
You begin to see not just objects but patterns, not just people but their energy, not just life but the intelligence moving through it. This is not a gift for the few, it is your birthright. But like all sacred things, it demands reverence. It cannot be hacked, it cannot be forced. It must be invited through purity, stillness, and surrender. The ancients knew this. They fasted not to punish the body, but to clear the vessel. They bathed in spring water, not for hygiene, but for vibration. They chanted, breathed, prayed, not to beg, but to attune. Everything they did was a conversation with perception, because they understood you don't awaken the third eye, you remove what's blocking it, and that's your task now. Remove, realign, remember, remove what numbs. The toxic foods, the poisoned water, the artificial light, the content that clouds. These are not just lifestyle choices, they are decisions that shape your destiny. Realign your rhythm. Sleep when the sky sleeps, rise with light. Breathe deeply, slowly, fully. Because your inner vision lives in your nervous system. If your body is in fight or flight, your spirit cannot speak. And remember, you are not crazy, you are not delusional, you are not broken for sensing things others do not. You are seeing
What they've been trained to ignore. That is not madness, that is awakening. You were not meant to stumble through life with dimmed vision. You were meant to walk as a lighthouse, illuminating not with dogma but with presence, seeing what others miss, feeling what others deny, knowing not through logic but through resonance. And here's the most beautiful part. As your third
eye heals, so does your life, because perception is creation. You don't just see the world, you shape it based on how you see. When you perceive through fear, the world mirrors danger. When you perceive through presence, it mirrors meaning. And when you perceive through awakened sight, the world becomes a living oracle, constantly speaking to your soul. You begin to trust yourself again. You stop outsourcing your knowing. You stop waiting for signs, because you become the sign, you become the signal, and the system, the matrix, begins to glitch around you, not because you fight it, but because you no longer believe it. This is the war they cannot win, unless you forget that it exists, but you've seen it now, and once seen it cannot be unseen. You are the one they feared you would become, not because you overthrow, but because you outgrow, not because you attack, but because you align, not because you dominate, but because you see, clearly, cleanly, completely, and no system, no poison, no lie can stop a human being who has returned to their true vision. Practical activation. The breath of sight, 10 minutes. Begin in darkness or soft candlelight. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Bring your attention to the space between your eyebrows, just above the bridge of your nose. Inhale slowly through your nose for 5 counts. As you do, visualize indigo, light gathering at your third eye. Hold for 5 counts. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 7 counts, releasing static, fog, and distraction. With each breath cycle, silently repeat, I reclaim my sight. I remember what I am. Do this for 7 full rounds, then sit in stillness. Observe any sensations, colors, emotions. Journal what arises. This is not imagination. It is awakening. The war on your perception ends the moment you choose to see. The mask called me. You were not born with a name. It was given to you, tenderly perhaps, by voices that loved you. But even then, it was a label, a symbol, a small container for something infinite. And from that name, the mask began to form, one layer at a time. You learned to smile when it was expected, to speak in ways that earned approval, to sit still, to not ask too many questions, and slowly you became someone, a person, a role, a version of yourself that others could understand. They told you that was maturity, growth, becoming somebody, but you felt it, didn't you? That quiet tremor under the surface. The sense that something real had been hidden in the process. That every time you said, "I am this," a part of you whispered, "But I'm also not." That whisper was the voice of your formless self. The you beneath the mask. You learned early which parts of you were lovable, which parts were too much, which ones earned silence, which ones earned praise. And like a sculptor carving stone, you chipped away at what didn't fit the image, not because you were weak, but because you were wise. You needed love, safety, belonging, and so you built the mask with the best intentions. You believed it was you, but it wasn't, not fully. The mask became your face. You learned to wear it so well that you forgot it was ever a performance. You believed the thoughts it thought. You obeyed the rules it internalized. You defended its story, even when it hurt you. Because that's what the ego does. Not out of malice, but out of fear. The ego is not evil.
It is terrified, terrified of the unknown, terrified of rejection, terrified of becoming invisible. It clings to identity like a life raft because it was never taught how to float in truth. And so it keeps you busy, you being someone, building
A persona, reinforcing a brand, performing a version of yourself that the world applauds, while the soul weeps quietly behind the curtain. You feel it when you're alone, when there's nothing left to prove. When you take off the costume and there's still a silence that doesn't feel like peace. That emptiness, that ache, isn't because something's wrong with you. It's because you've been living as the echo of yourself. But echoes don't create, they repeat, and you were not born to repeat. You were born to radiate, to reveal, to remember. The you behind the name, behind the gender, behind the nationality. The one who was never confused, never divided, never defined, only buried. You are not your mask. You are the space it appears in. You are not your story. You are the witness of its unfolding. You are not your name. You are the nameless silence that was here before language ever existed. This isn't philosophy. This is liberation. You've spent your life trying to improve the mask, make it prettier, smarter, stronger, more palatable, and you've succeeded. People like it, they trust it, they respond to it, but you know, it's still a mask, and as long as you live from it, you will never feel truly free, because the mask cannot receive real love. Only the performance can. And every time someone praises the mask, a deeper part of you wonders, but would they love me without it? That question burns, not because it hurts, but because it reveals the truth that the mask was never meant to be permanent. It was a tool, a vehicle, a temporary interface, but somewhere along the way the actor became the role, and now you're waking up. Not because the role failed, but because the soul is done pretending. This is the sacred moment. The moment when the self-made identity begins to crack, and instead of patching it up again, you pause. You let the light come through, you let the real come forward, but be warned, this process is not glamorous. It's not a highlight reel. It's not aesthetic. It's raw. It's tender. It's a sacred undoing, a dismantling of what you thought was you, so that what's real can emerge. And what's real doesn't always look enlightened. It looks like trembling, like tears,
like confusion, like truth, but it is holy, because it is yours, not borrowed, not inherited.
not trained, yours. You cannot embody the divine while clinging to the costume. You cannot merge with presence while defending a persona. And so the mask must fall, not violently, but gently, with reverence, with compassion, with love for the part of you that wore it for so long. There is no shame in the mask, only fatigue. The performance is exhausting because it isn't sustainable. Authenticity is the only energy-efficient way to live, and once you taste that freedom, there's no going back. You may still wear the mask when needed, at work, in public, in moments of form, but you'll never again mistake it for who you are. And that shift, that remembering, that is the rebirth. The system cannot control an undefinable being. It depends on your attachment to identity. It depends on your fear of the void. But the void is not empty. It is full, full of potential, full of presence, full of the you that existed before you was even an idea. Let the mask dissolve. Let the image die. Let the roles fall away. You will not disappear. You will expand. You will stop performing and start radiating. You will become what you've always been, the breath between thoughts, the presence behind your eyes, the still, eternal flame that watches the story without getting lost in it. This is the truth. You don't need to be more. You only need to be less of what you're not. Practical exercise, the mirror without name, is 7-10 minutes. Stand in front of a mirror. Remove all adornments, no makeup, jewelry, nothing that signals a role. Look into your own eyes, not as you, but as awareness looking at form. For 5 minutes, just observe. As thoughts arise, I am this, I look like that.
I should let them pass. Then speak aloud. I see the one behind the name. I release the role. I am presence. Close your eyes. Place your hand on your heart. Whisper this 3 times. I remember the self behind the self. Breathe
Deeply. When you're ready, open your eyes. You are not returning to you. You are returning to what sees. The hidden beings who feed on your light. There are things in this world that do not want you to wake up. Not because you are dangerous in the usual sense, but because you are powerful in a way they cannot control. You are not just flesh. You are not just mind. You are light, condensed into form, carrying codes that distort their illusion the moment they activate. And so they whisper, they sow doubt, they encourage division, not through violence, but through frequency, through suggestion, through fear. You've felt them, though you may not have known what to call them. The voice that tells you to stay small. The anxiety that flares up when you try to speak your truth. The sudden wave of shame that arrives for no reason, just when you begin to feel powerful. That's not always you. And it's not random. There are beings, non-physical, non-human, who survive off your disconnection. And the more fragmented you are, the more they feed. The ancient Gnostics called them archons, not demons, not monsters, but energetic parasites, thought forms born from chaos, existing in the shadows between dimensions. They cannot create, they cannot love, they can only manipulate, mimic, distort, and their food is your attention, your fear, your self-rejection. They are not myth, they are not metaphor, they are real, not as creatures with horns, but as frequencies that attach to wounds. They don't need to possess your body, they only need to possess your beliefs, because if they can convince you that you are weak, divided, alone, they don't need to do anything else. You will leak your energy by default. These beings don't hide under your bed, they hide in the loops of your mind, in the unresolved trauma, in the inherited guilt. They appear as intrusive thoughts, addictive impulses, emotional spirals. They whisper in familiar voices, pretending to be you, but they're not. They are the echo of every lie you've believed about your unworthiness. This is not superstition. This is spiritual ecology. Just as your body can be infected by viruses, your energy can be infiltrated by low-frequency intelligences. And just as your immune system fights to protect you, your awareness is the antidote to their influence, because the moment you see them, they begin to dissolve. Their power is not in strength, it is in secrecy. They use the systems around you as delivery mechanisms. The media floods your nervous system with fear. The education system rewards obedience and punishes intuition. The entertainment industry glamorizes disconnection, distortion, division. And the more distracted you become, the more porous your field. But it goes deeper. Your relationships, your scrolling, your food, your inner dialogue, everything in this modern world has been subtly shaped to keep you reactive, because a reactive human is predictable, and a predictable human is easy to siphon. The archons don't care about your politics, your preferences, your personality. They only care about keeping you in a loop of emotional instability, so you stay disconnected from your essence. You might think this is too dark, too heavy, too much. But look around. Why do so? Many people feel like they're at war with themselves. Why do self-help and spirituality often feel like a revolving door? Why do moments of clarity fade into fog so quickly? It's not because you're broken, it's because something is feeding on the gap between your knowing and your living. They are not all powerful, but they are clever. They plant a single doubt and let it grow. They trigger one trauma and let it ripple. They whisper one shameful thought and let it fester. And the longer you mistake that voice for your own, the more influence they gain. But here's the truth they cannot survive. You are not their host. You are not their home. You are a sovereign field of divine intelligence, and the moment you reclaim that sovereignty, not as concept, but as embodiment, their grip begins to collapse. Because they cannot feed on wholeness, and they cannot latch onto coherence, is they cannot manipulate presence. The war is not fought with weapons, it is fought with awareness, with vibration, with remembering. When you stop reacting, they lose their hold. When you stop believing the thought, it dissolves. When you stop feeding the loop, the parasite starves. This is why stillness is so threatening. Because in stillness you see, and what you see, you can heal, you can clear, you can release. You don't need to fight them. You only need to stop forgetting who you are, because you are not a victim of unseen forces. You are the sun they cannot look directly at, and when your field is lit with truth, they scatter like smoke. You don't need to fear them, you need to know your light, but light without grounding is just a concept. So you must anchor it. in your choices, in your breath, in your energy hygiene, because this is not about paranoia, it's about clarity. Clean your space. Watch your thoughts. Protect your field like you would a temple, because that's what it is. And this is not just personal. It is planetary. The Earth itself is awakening. The field is shifting, and those who once thrived in darkness are scrambling to maintain control. That's why everything feels louder right now. The chaos, the conflict, the urgency. It's not the end. It's the exposure. What was once hidden is surfacing, because it can no longer hide in the presence of your light. You are not here to fight shadows. You are here to shine so brightly that shadows cannot survive. You are the exorcist of your own energy. You don't need to scream. You don't need to cast spells. You only need to stand in the frequency of remembrance. Say it now, softly. I do not consent to distortion. I remember who I am. And say it again, louder. This field is sovereign. This light is mine. Because when you speak from knowing, not fear, you become uninhabitable to anything less than truth. This is the hidden war, but you are no longer hiding. Let them tremble. Practical ritual. The field of fire. 10-12 minutes. Sit in a quiet, dimly lit space. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Imagine a brilliant sphere of golden fire surrounding your entire body. This is not symbolic. This is your energetic firewall. With each inhale, make it brighter. With each exhale, feel anything that doesn't belong dissolving into light. Now say aloud with command, anything that is not of my soul's light, leave now. I revoke all unconscious contracts. I reclaim my energy across all time, all space,
all dimensions. My field is clear, my essence is whole, my light is sovereign. Feel the shift, feel the stillness that follows. That's not emptiness, that's your truth. Stay here. Breathe in this fire, let it encode your cells, and when you
rise, do not return to the old agreements. You are no longer food, you are the flame. The sacred temple of the body, they taught you that your body was flesh, just flesh, temporary, dirty, a shell to drag through the world until the spirit could escape. They taught you to see it as flawed, fragile, shameful, something to control, to ignore, to punish. And slowly, without realizing it, you began to live from the neck up, thinking, striving, escaping into abstraction, while your temple waited below, forgotten. But your body is not an obstacle to awakening. It is the vessel of it, every breath, every beat, every cell, all of it, intelligent beyond measure, alive with memory, speaking in sensations, in symptoms, in stillness, not as an object, but as a sacred, breathing archive of everything your soul has walked through, and everything it came here to become. This is the secret mystics never forgot. While systems of control glorified mind and disembodied logic, the ancients bowed to the body. They washed it with herbs, sang to it, breathed through it, aligned it with stars and stones and sun, because they knew the body wasn't the enemy
of the divine. It was its most intimate expression. Your body is not separate from spirit. It is spirit, condensed, crystallized, made visible. To awaken without the body is to build a temple without a foundation.
Your intuition lives in your gut, your truth trembles in your chest, your knowing rises through your spine. You are not here to transcend this vessel. You are here to remember how to live inside it, fully, fiercely, and with reverence. And yet, you've been taught to numb it with food that dulls, with light that disorients, with movement that punishes, with schedules that never let you rest, because a numbed body is a quiet body. And a quiet body won't speak truth. It won't rebel. It won't remember. It will comply. It will carry you through performance after performance, never asking why you're so tired, never reminding you that fatigue is not laziness. It is protest. But beneath the numbness, the intelligence remains. Your body is trying to speak to you through tension, through cravings, through pain. Not as punishment, but as language. Your symptoms are messages. Your posture is a story. Your energy is a compass. And when you ignore it, you don't just miss the signal, you delay the initiation, because every awakening must pass through the flesh, through breath, through sensation, through emotion. You cannot heal by escaping your body. You heal by coming home to it. You were not meant to be at war with your own vessel. And yet, how many mornings do you wake up already frustrated with your form? How many meals are consumed in guilt? How many
emotions are swallowed because they make your chest burn, your jaw tighten, your heart race? These are not flaws, they are the body's alarms.
And you were taught to silence them, but now you remember. Now you listen. The temple never stopped waiting. It holds no grudge. It does not shame you. It only asks, will you return? Will you return to the sacred ground beneath your skin? Will you walk barefoot across the soil of your own being, not as master, but as pilgrim? Because the body is not a machine. It is a sanctuary, and its architecture is divine. Your gut, teeming with microbiome, alive with neurons, is your second brain. It is where your immune system, your mood, your spiritual receptivity all converge. And yet it is under siege through pesticides, through processed food, through chemicals that sever the line between hunger and truth. Your nervous system, the golden circuitry of your perception, is overloaded, stretched, scattered. The world hurls signals faster than your body can process, and so you live in flight or fight, running on adrenaline, disconnected from rest, from repair, from the rhythm of your own breath. But here's the miracle: your body still wants to heal. It is always moving toward coherence, toward balance, toward
light. The moment you pause, the moment you listen, the moment you honor it with the smallest act of reverence, a slow breath, a walk in silence, a cup of water held like a blessing, the temple begins to repair itself. This is not about
perfection. It is not about cleansing every impurity or mastering every protocol. It is about relationship, devotion, daily acts of love, and the willingness to believe that your body is not betraying you. It is begging to be heard. To treat your body as sacred is to treat your awakening as real, because the soul cannot fully descend into a vessel it's afraid of. It will hover, it will speak in dreams, but it will not root. And that rooting, that embodied truth, is what makes you unshakable. That is what turns insight into reality. That is what births sovereignty. You are not here to escape the earth. You are here to embody the heavens. You are not just light. You are light that moves, that breathes, that bleeds, that breaks and heals and remembers itself again. And each time you choose to inhabit the body with love, you make it easier for others to do the same, because an embodied being radiates differently. They speak from their gut, not just their throat. They walk into a room and shift the energy. They don't need to preach. Their presence is the message. Their cells are singing, "This is what wholeness looks like." And in a world addicted to disembodiment, that presence is revolutionary. So no, this isn't just about health. It's about holiness. And your next breath is a prayer. Your next meal is communion. Your next moment of stillness is a sacred offering. The temple is not somewhere far away. It is right here, built from your bones, lit by your breath, waiting for your return. Practical grounding. Temple reclamation practice, 7 to 10 minutes. Find a quiet space. Sit or lie down with your hand resting over your heart or belly. Close your eyes and take 3 slow breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Now bring your awareness to your body, not as a concept, but as a place. A living temple, one by one, silently bless each part. My feet, I thank you for carrying me. My legs, I thank you for standing for me. My belly, I thank you for digesting life. My chest, I thank you for holding my heart. My voice, I thank you for speaking my truth. My hands, I thank you for reaching. My spine, I thank you for remembering. Now, whisper aloud, I return to my temple. I treat it as sacred. I live here, fully. Let this be your promise, because the divine doesn't need another theory. It needs a vessel. And you were
Always meant to be that holy ground.
breath, the forgotten key. You've been breathing this entire time. Inhale, exhale. Again and again, a quiet rhythm beneath every thought, every action, every emotion. But when was the last time you noticed? When was the last time you bowed your head to the miracle that has kept you alive since your very first cry? They never taught you this in school, that your breath is not just biology. It is a sacred code, a living bridge between the visible and the invisible, between the mask you wear and the truth that breathes beneath it. Breath is the language of the soul. Before you spoke words, you spoke breath. Before you could name God, you were already in communion. The ancients knew this. Across traditions and continents, breath was never taken for granted. It was studied, honored, mastered. In Sanskrit, it was called prana, life force. In Chinese, qi, the animating power of heaven and earth. In Hermetic traditions, breath was seen as the divine rhythm of spirit moving through form. Every inhale, the soul entering. Every exhale, the ego dissolving. You were never meant to breathe unconsciously. But the modern world has trained you otherwise. It rushes you. It fragments you. It teaches you to speak before you feel, to react before you breathe, to chase instead of listen. And so your breath became shallow, tight, forgotten. And in that forgetting, you lost access to your clearest medicine, not just for the body, but for perception, clarity, transformation. They don't want you to remember this. Not because breath is dangerous, but because it's free, because you don't need a pill, a priest, a platform, or permission to begin. You only need presence. And once you begin to breathe with intention, everything changes. Your nervous system recalibrates, your mind softens, your intuition sharpens, your soul leans forward, ready. Because breath is not just air.
It is information. Each inhale carries not only oxygen, but memory. Memory of who you were before the world told you otherwise. Memory of how it feels to be safe inside your body. Memory of what it means to trust your knowing. And each exhale
is a release of fear, of falsehood, of the residue of roles you were never meant to wear. Breath invites you back to the temple, to the now, to the sacred simplicity of being, not doing, not fixing, not performing, just being, as you are, where you are. It peels away the noise layer by layer until you remember. The truth was never far. It was only buried beneath everything you forgot to exhale. When you breathe with awareness, you begin to sense things you'd overlooked. The subtle tension in your shoulders, the quiet ache in your heart, the whisper of your gut trying to speak. Breath is the doorway to embodied truth. And once opened, it will not let you lie to yourself anymore. It will guide you gently, relentlessly, back to what is real. This is why the mystics built entire systems around it. Not to regulate stress, but to open portals, pranayama, Taoist breath alchemy, shamanic rhythms, breath of fire, coherent breathing. All these ancient forms speak one sacred truth. When you control your breath, you control your state of consciousness. And when you shift your state, you shift your life. But the modern world mocks what it does not understand. It calls sacred breath woo, reducing it to wellness trends, fitness routines, or hacks for productivity. It teaches you to breathe just enough to survive, but never deep enough to remember. Because a deeply breathing human becomes difficult to manipulate, they slow down, they become sensitive, they begin to feel everything. And that feeling is inconvenient to a system built on numbness. Most people are overthinking because they're underbreathing. Their anxiety isn't a flaw. It's the signal of a body starved for oxygen, for grounding, for presence. They feel foggy not because they lack focus, but because their cells are suffocating beneath 1,000 shallow breaths. They feel disconnected because their spirit is exiled to the margins of their awareness, waiting to be breathed back into the center. Your breath is not a reflex. It is a rhythm. And rhythms can be reclaimed. When you inhale fully from your belly, not just your chest, you activate the parasympathetic system, the body's natural state of healing and openness. When you exhale slowly, you signal to the soul, it is safe to land here. You don't need to chant in Sanskrit to awaken. You only need to remember how to breathe like your body was made to. Start there. Inhale until your ribs expand like wings. Exhale until your spine softens. Let breath be the way you pray. Not with words, but with willingness. Let breath be the way you confess. Not to someone outside, but to the God within, still waiting for your attention.
Let breath be the way you heal. Let it carve open the chambers you sealed off to survive. Let it show you that you are still alive beneath the layers, because breath doesn't lie. It meets you exactly where you are, and it brings you back.
Gently, steadily, again and again, from every place you were never meant to live. And the most beautiful truth, breath is always available, even when your mind races, even when your heart breaks, even when your faith wavers. The breath remains a quiet, ancient companion, whispering, "Come back, begin again." Every breath is a reset, a resurrection.
A remembering, so breathe now as if your soul depends on it.
Because it does. Practical activation. The breath of returning. 10 to 12 minutes. Sit comfortably with a straight spine. Place one hand on your heart, the other on your belly. Close your eyes. Begin by breathing in for a count of 4, holding for 4 and exhaling for 6. Do this gently for several rounds, letting your body guide the pace. Now as you inhale, imagine a thread of golden light entering your body through your nose, spiraling down your spine. As you exhale, visualize that light washing away static, fear, residue, confusion. Each breath, a reclamation. Each breath, a soft return. When you feel still, whisper aloud, I return to my breath. I return to myself. I return to the presence that never left. Breathe here. Just breathe. No goal, no effort. Only remembering. You don't need more information. You need more inhalations. You don't need to chase the divine. You only need to invite it in, and it enters one breath
at a time.
Becoming the living transmission, there comes a moment in every awakening when insight is no longer enough. You've read the books, heard the teachings, felt the stirrings. You've tasted truth in glimpses, sudden clarity in silence, intuitive, knowing in stillness, sacred sparks during breath and shadow work. You've seen through the illusion, felt the mask slip, witnessed the system glitch in the presence of your light. But the question remains, will you live what you've seen? Because realization without embodiment is a ghost. It haunts you with what could be, but never settles into your bones. You don't need another breakthrough. You need to become the breakthrough. This is the great pivot, the shift from seeker to transmitter. When you stop trying to get there and start living from the place you already glimpsed. When truth moves from idea into action, into form, into the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you rise from bed in the morning. Embodiment
is not performance. It is presence made visible. To embody truth is not to shout it. It's to walk into a room and change the energy without saying a word. It's to let your nervous system speak before your voice does. It's when the way you
live whispers, I remember, and the room around you begins to remember too. Not because you're special, but because you're real. This world is full of noise, but the embodied are signal. They radiate coherence. They carry stillness like a pulse. They ask no one for permission to be whole, and that is rare, because living truthfully comes at a cost. It costs you the convenience of fitting in. It costs you the comfort of being liked for your mask. It costs you the illusion that awakening is just a series of thoughts or rituals. Embodiment is messy. It's not about aesthetic enlightenment. It's about integration, when your highest insight meets your most human moment. Can you live from your breath when the world spins in panic? Can you stay grounded when shame knocks on your door again? Can you speak truth when silence would be easier? Can you listen when you'd rather defend? These are not spiritual hypotheticals. These are the tests, not tests from a punishing God, but invitations from your soul asking, are you ready to carry this frequency through your choices? Because every moment you are transmitting something. And the real question is, what? Are you broadcasting fear, even subtly, in the way you shrink, hedge, or seek validation? Are you broadcasting performance, saying all the right words while your body contracts with doubt? Or are you broadcasting presence, steady, grounded, unapologetically whole? You don't have to be perfect. You have to be true. And being true means living from the place inside you that's deeper than performance. The place that doesn't need applause or agreement. The place that knows and lets that knowing speak not through argument, but through embodiment. When you become the living transmission, everything shifts. You don't try to change people. You simply change the frequency in the room. You don't convince, you resonate, you don't dominate, you illuminate. And this light doesn't come from you. It comes through you. Because your body, when aligned with spirit, becomes a tuning fork for the divine. People won't remember your opinions, but they'll remember how they felt in your presence, because presence is what the world is starving for. So the question is, are you willing to become that? Not someday, but now. Into this breath, in this body, in this moment. It begins with choice, and choice becomes rhythm. Rhythm becomes integrity, and integrity becomes frequency. That's embodiment. It's when your yes means yes. Your no means no. Your silence holds strength. Your tears hold truth. You stop chasing alignment and become alignment. You stop wearing your truth like a badge and start living it like a pulse, and make no mistake. This threatens the system because it depends on your fragmentation, on your hesitation, on your delay. An embodied being doesn't feed the machine. They short-circuit it. So don't be surprised when the tests increase, when old stories try to hook you, when ghosts from your past return for one last dance, not to break you, but to see if you'll still choose the new you when the pressure rises. That's when embodiment crystallizes, not in retreats, not in rituals, but in the raw, holy grind of everyday life. When you breathe instead of react. When you pause instead of perform. When you feel and don't abandon yourself. That is where truth takes root. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be right. You just have to be clear, because clarity is felt. It doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't need to prove its light. It just shines, quietly, fiercely, unapologetically. And here's the mystery. The more embodied you become, the less you need to speak, the more your being does the work. Your relationships shift, your environment recalibrates. Not because you force it, but because your energy is no longer negotiable. You become a living reminder of what's possible, of what's real, of what can no longer be faked. That is the transmission, and you are its vessel. Practical integration. The living transmission walk. 10 minutes. This is not meditation. This is movement as transmission. Begin by stepping outside, barefoot if possible. With each step, become aware of your breath. Inhale, I remember. Exhale, I radiate. As you walk, notice your posture, your presence, your pace. Don't rush. Let each step be a declaration. I am here. I am real. I am aligned. Feel the earth beneath you. Feel your body in rhythm. You are not just walking, you are broadcasting. Without words, without effort, just presence. At the end of your walk, pause. Place your hand over your heart. Say aloud, I.
No longer seek alignment. I am alignment. I no longer seek light. I live it. Breathe it in. Let the frequency settle. From now on, you don't carry your truth like a shield. You carry it like a pulse. You don't preach. You transmit.
You were always the one. It was never about becoming more. It was always about becoming real. All this time, you searched for answers, for signs, for someone to tell you what you are. You studied the teachings. You followed the paths. You climbed the ladders of logic, of lineage, of longing. And now, at the end of it all, a quiet truth begins to rise. Not as a shout, but as a stillness. You were never missing. You were never broken. You were never waiting for permission. The God you sought in sacred texts, in distant stars, in whispered mantras was never far. It was here, in your chest, in your breath, in the silent awareness that has watched it all. The joy, the fear, the doubt, the remembering. It watched patiently, lovingly, unmoved. And now you feel it. The difference, the shift, the unshakable calm that comes not from answers, but from embodiment. You no longer seek light. You carry it. You no longer chase freedom. You are it. Not because something new appeared, but because everything false has fallen away. This journey was never about finding something outside you. It was about remembering what the world asked you to forget. They told you to shrink. You expanded. They told you to conform. You listened inward. They told you who to be. You unlearned until only truth remained. And now you see clearly. You
see the illusion and choose presence, and you see the noise and choose silence. You see the fear and choose breath, because the awakened don't escape the world. They walk through it differently. They carry a rhythm the system cannot
decode, a clarity that confuses those still asleep, a presence that requires no explanation, only embodiment, and that is you now. Not perfect, not finished, but real. You are no longer a seeker. You are a signal, a transmitter of coherence, a living breath of the divine, awake in form. You won't need to convince anyone. You'll simply be, and that will be enough, more than enough. Because when presence enters the room, truth arrives with it. So stand tall, speak softly, love deeply, move slowly, breathe fully. And remember, this is not the end. It is the beginning of life without the mask, without the noise, without the fear, a life lived not as a performance, but as a pulse, not as an identity, but as awareness in motion. And if you ever forget, return to the breath, return to the stillness, return to the remembering that cannot be undone, because you were always the one, and now you remember.